Hello, wonderful people. Thank you again for tuning in. We're back for another Chris McPherson Show Daily Dose, our second Daily Dose today on Sunday, the 6th of July. And it's time to talk some cricket after our earlier Wimbledon Daily Dose, looking ahead to day 7 there. Check that one out in our feeds if you haven't already seen it. It is time to look, though, back at day 3 of the second test between Australia and the West Indies being played at St George in Grenada. And night watchman Nathan Lyon and Cameron Green started us off for day 3. Green was batting with some fluency while Nathan Lyon just continued to frustrate early on against the West Indies attack. The West Indies did finally get that breakthrough they needed for the morning with an edge from Nathan Lyon coming off the bowling of Alzari Joseph. Joseph swinging it away to have the Aussies 3 for 28 early in the morning session, and a couple of questions still to be answered for the Australian batting lineup. Did leave things at a pivotal point, and the West Indies knew that if they could strike a couple of wickets and a couple of dagger blows, they could keep themselves right in this contest with some wickets. However, Cameron Green continued to find some gaps to keep the score ticking along, not always in the most conventional ways, but he was finding the boundary and keeping things ticking before Steve Smith got going with some well-placed shots and taking full opportunity of some looser bowling from the West Indies quicks at times. This led Australia to a score of 3 for 69 at lunch, meaning they'd eked their way past a 100-run lead, and things started to look a little ominous for the hosts. And after lunch, it was more of the same. Green and Smith continued to grow in confidence, taking the Australian second innings score past 100, with Smith batting with plenty of aggression and style. Green, though, did pip Smith to be the first to reach a half-century in this innings for the Australians. However, it was only a delivery after he brought up that ninth greater than 50 score in his Test career and first against the West Indies that he chased the Shamar Joseph ball outside his off-stump and chopped it on. The ball crashed into the base of his off-stump and sent Green back to the pavilion for 52. But the pressure wasn't done for the West Indies. Travis Head came to the crease and, sure enough, first ball stroked his ball elegantly through the offside for a 4. Steve Smith, 2 overs later, brought up his 50 with a flick off the pads from another errant delivery from the West Indies pace attack, and things were not looking great. Head found more boundaries. Smith decided to up the tempo, with the two of them exchanging the boundaries to extend Australia's lead past 200, including Steve Smith clearing the rope at one point for a 6. We got to tea, and Australia were 4 for 175, leading by 208, and the game was rapidly escaping the clutches and the hopes of the Windies as the Aussies looked to close out the series and take it to a 2-0 unassailable lead heading into the third test. However, soon after tea, Justin Graves struck. He had Steve Smith trapped in front and given out. The former Australian captain was immediately reviewing the decision and fell foul of that dreaded grey area of umpire's call. The impact was seen to be just on the edge of the stump line, departing for a really well-made 71 from 119 balls. He got off to a rapid start, slowed a little bit later in his innings, but again, a really strong 71 that at the moment sits as the high bat for this innings. The West Indies didn't have to wait long for another breakthrough to keep their faint hopes alive as Greaves grabbed a second wicket, claiming the in-form Bo Webster through the hands of John Campbell. Webster fell for 2, just feathering it into the slips, and it was a good take by Campbell. It give the hopes just the slimmest of hopes, with Australia then 6 for 181. But at that point, the lead 214 is starting to get away. You could argue that the target could still be in reach. 250 might be achievable. Batting conditions are starting to suggest that it might be a little challenging. But again, if you're looking at the glass half full as a West Indian fan, then sure, you could argue around that 250 mark could be chased down, but it's going to need something special. The game seemed to be at a potential inflection point as Alex Carey came to the crease. However, he and Travis Head combined for a nice little minor partnership of 31 just to try and stretch it further out of the Windies' reach before Travis Head fell to a beautiful delivery that cut back off the surface from Shamar Joseph. He's got such a way with the ball, does the big West Indian. That had Australia 7 for 212 with stumps on the horizon, and that lead starting to balloon out of sight for the West Indies, out to 245. Pat Cummins and Alex Carey steered Australia to stumps, adding a further 9 runs to the Australian total to take the margin past 250 and starting to look like it might be getting out of reach for the West Indies. We talked about this yesterday. We suggested that maybe around that 200 to 250 would be the stretch target for the West Indies. As we start to get further and further, the Australians' confidence will grow, and it's starting to look less and less likely that the Windies can keep this series alive. At stumps, Australia was 7 for 221. They lead by 254. 2 days to play, and look, there's certainly some key takeaways from day 3 and from the first 3 days of this test. I think the one thing for the West Indies is as they fatigued, the loose fast bowling became quite apparent, and Steve Smith and Cameron Green most particularly, but also a couple of times Travis Head and even Alex Carey late in the day were capitalising. They were pouncing on those loose balls. There's a few half volleys to Steve Smith, and you just can't bowl someone of Steve Smith's class at that length consistently because he will capitalise, and he did a number of times, punching balls out into the outfield and taking twos, threes, and even finding the rope a couple of times as well. And that really contributed to how quickly this lead built. I think there's a really good combination of Cameron Green's really patient batting and then some aggression, that alternating in opposite tempo. Steve Smith, Travis Head, both taking things on. It was great to see. The one thing I will say about the batting, though, it does paper over the cracks here about the Aussie openers. And obviously, we've got two men who are at very different points of their career. Sam Constance still trying to find his way in the Test arena. Usman Khawaja certainly on the back end of his career, although he said that he's got every intention of batting through and going through the Ashes and worrying about the future of his career after that. But again, both players have got a start at some point here, but both have failed as well. We haven't seen any real signs of a dominating opening bat from either of these, and it's going to start to raise some question marks and put asterisks next to their name, as some Aussie batters will be asking, what do I need to do to get into that space? But again, whether or not we've got anyone who is going to be strong enough and is performing well enough at the moment, I don't know. I think we're going to have to wait and see what the start of the Shield season brings as it opens up. But there might be a window there. If someone can come out and knock the door down with a couple of early hundreds in the Shield campaign, that it might really force the Australian selectors' hands. Sam Constance, Usman Khawaja, they're going to be on notice heading into this third test, I feel, and the pressure's going to be on. They'll get a free hit here because it looks like Australia will lead 2-0, barring something minor miracle in terms of weather, or alternatively in terms of a turnaround from the West Indies. So again, no pressure on this one. It's time to shine. If they can't do it there, then I've really got concerns about what that means for the first Ashes test when we hit the Aussie home summer. Look, the West Indies, they know heading into day 4, they need 3 rapid wickets. The lead at the moment is 254. They can't afford for Australia to add too much more to that. If it starts to get out to the 280s, 290s, 300s, they're on the ropes. They're down for a count. You know, they might even get a standing 8 count. That's the kind of position they're in. They're in trouble here on their home decks. We know that Australia were the favourites heading into this series, but I just need to see some more fight from the West Indians. And it's going to take, even if they are to chase this down, even if they were to get 3 for single digits in the morning, it's going to take a mammoth showing from a couple of their batters. And we just haven't seen enough of that yet from their top order. Their top order's made Australia's top order look good. Even their middle order has been inconsistent. Their bowlers have papered over some cracks with some batting, the Josephs and Greaves and these sorts of guys at different points, and they can't rely on that. We need to see more from the likes of Campbell, Chase, Shai Hope even. Another big score from Brandon King would be wonderful. I think he's certainly got the temperament and the pedigree. He's just got to find his spot in Test cricket. So we'll watch that and wait and see. It'll be interesting to see. There is a little bit of rain predicted tomorrow around lunch to early afternoon. I can't imagine it'll be enough to save the West Indies, but it will be interesting to see how that impacts Australia's thoughts. If they get to lunch and they're sort of leading by maybe 310 or so, 320, it'll be an interesting question then of how much time's left, how much time's lost, and what they do late in the day, whether or not they get there and look to maybe a declaration and to give their bowlers maybe 3.5, almost 4 sessions to bowl to try and take those wickets, or will they just back them and say, look, we'll back deep into this day, and if we happen to get almost to the end of day 4 and we lead by 380 or so, well, that's so be it. But I think tactically, if they can get that lead to sort of 300 to 330, that will be more than enough. And it might be a bit of considered a sporting declaration from Pat Cummins, but it'll give them something to bowl to and certainly the time to take the wickets and really, I guess, take that piece of the West Indies just trying to defend their way to a draw out of the equation more so. So we'll wait and see. But still possibly some permutations depending on how much of that rain actually hits. As I said, it's not a significant amount of rain, but it is supposed to be prolonged over a sort of 2 to 3 hour period for about 1 o'clock. So we'll wait and see what that delivers. Look, as I said, maybe the Aussies will back their bowlers. We can see that batting hasn't been easy on these West Indian pitches so far, whether the first test or this one here in St George. So, maybe they just back the bowlers to get it done on day 5 if need be. But look, conditions are clearly a challenge and bowler favourable, so it'll be interesting to see. And it's interesting to see if this continues on to Kingston, the third test, a pink ball test, under lights. You think the bowlers have got an advantage now? My goodness, you wouldn't want to be a batter in that third test if they're going to get more of a leg up the bowlers. We're going to see teams cleaned up for under 200 regularly. We might see a game that finishes on the third day, but hopefully they can make sure there's a sporting pitch in Kingston and there's a bit of an opportunity for both the ball and the bat to shine. There's still plenty more twists and turns in this one. The West Indies, the pressure on them. They need to get some early wickets here on day 4 to keep this one alive. Otherwise, it's just going to be an Australian cruise to victory. A big thank you again for tuning into the Chris McPherson Show Daily Dose. Look forward to coming back to you again tomorrow. Make sure to head back through our feed. Catch our latest weekly episode that was dropped on Thursday night. Plenty of content there, talking about lots of different things from Wimbledon, Jake Paul, an NRLW season preview, which is now seeing the NRLW first round in full flight. And, of course, our daily dose is dropping most days and a couple some days as well. But until next time, enjoy your sporting landscape, and we look forward to talking to you soon.